Xibalba, the Underworld, a place that all should fear. Death, rivers of blood and pus, an afterlife of the Quiche people. A place where even divine forces can be rent asunder and die. A great and terrible place, overseen by the Xibalbans, and the place where we rejoin our hero twins, Hunaphu and Xbilanque. You see, before they were slaying Seven Macaw and his grandiose sons, our heroes found their father, the first Hunaphu, and their uncle, the seventh Hunaphu, missing. The pair had been invited to the Underworld for a series of games and challenges, and eventually, the ball game, Pock to Pock, where they were outplayed and tricked before being slain. Now, years later, the siblings were the ones called to Xibalba for a challenge. The twins, before they went, prepared the best they could and began to make their way down. Even the road to Xibalba proved challenging, a threatening place, a series of rivers to mar them and hold them down. The first, the river of pus, and the second, the river of blood. They're meant to entrap and drown those foolhardy enough to come to Xibalba. Yet our cunning heroes used their massive blowguns as rafts to cross the river and enter the land proper. Next came a great crossroads, numerous interweaving paths that lead further into the Underworld, and having learned in their preparations the road to take, they proceeded onward. Their father and uncle in their journey moved on ahead and came face to face with a council of numerous Xibalbans, and paid respect to each, though this was a trap. But Xbilanque and Hunaphu had other ideas. They called forth a mosquito, a creature that was small, almost imperceivable, and capable of being a spy, and sent it onward towards the seated council of Xibalbans, telling it to bite them. So progressively it flew by and bit into the lords of the Underworld. And being bitten, they reacted, saying their names and pointing to the next living being, while ignoring what made their council so large. Numerous mannequins poised to be honored despite having no names. Hearing and seeing this, the twin gods made their way forward, honoring the true lords of Xibalba, and then proceeding to ignore the same lords as they told the pair to sit. The reason? The bench that was prepared for them was a griddle stone that was being heated for cooking. Tricked a few times over, the Xibalban gods led the boys to their next challenge, the Dark House, and challenged them to keep a torch lit and 2 cigars to go along with it, for an entire night without having them run down. A test that was made to embarrass Hunaphu and Xbilanque, because it was impossible. But taking a page from their clever minds, and something not too out of the question for a Looney Tunes character, the boys had a different idea. Several macaw feathers were affixed to the torch, and lightning bugs to the end of the cigars. And when the Xibalbans came the next morning, they found the torches lit, and the cigars ignited as well. Something impossible. They succeeded again. Surprised by the guile of the boys, the Xibalban and their plans to foil and kill the boys kicked up a notch, and they began the game of Pock to Pock. An argument was held over the ball to be used, but our hero twins eventually gave in to the demands of the Xibalbans and decided to play with their ball, a human skull, and the game was underway. They volleyed back and forth for a while before Hunaphu hit the ball, and from it, a white dagger came spinning. Stunned by the blatant assassination attempt, the two heroes were willing to turn around and go home. But the Xibalbans, cursing themselves for the failure of the killing, asked the boys to stay and use their own ball. The sides then competed to even-keel competition, only for Hunaphu and Xbilanque to quit and award the victory to the Xibalbans, meaning that they would be tasked with claiming the reward of flowers that was promised for the game. Before that, however, as it was late, the twins were told to stay the night in the House of Razors, a room filled with numerous spinning blades, the intention being that, like the hidden dagger, these blades would butcher the heroes before they got the chance to make further mockery of the Xibalbans again. Unfortunately, the twins, being divine themselves, were able to speak to the blades, and in exchange for their own lives, they promised the flesh of all beasts, and the blades agreed, lowering their edges and allowing the youths a stay without no harm coming to them. Without clouds of daggers spinning in their faces, the boys were able to begin their next plan, the retrieving of the promised flowers. You see, the garden that contained these promised flowers was owned by one Death, one of the Xibalbans, who had it guarded with fierce watchmen. So going to pick the flowers would prove catastrophic and potentially deadly. So instead, the boys called upon the ants crawling on the ground and told them to clip free bits of flower, as leafcutter ants are wont to do, and to bring them back. And just as with the mosquito, the ants went and did as they were told. Filling 4 bowls of flowers, the youths walked forth unharmed to their Xibalban hosts. And when they arrived, the Xibalbans were terrified. But they had further plans. They would go on to continue trying to embarrass and slay the boys. A house filled with bitter cold. It failed. A house filled with jaguars, which in return for the boys' lives were given bones and flesh. A house of fire barely managed to simmer their skin. All of this to the utter surprise of the Xibalbans. The utter inability to die proved troublesome. Then, it was when trapped in the bat house that the first casualty happened. For our heroes, a bat, a strike bat or flash bat, a monster, flew over and pulled Hunaphu's heads from his body, and carried it to the Xibalbans, who relished while Xbilanque despaired. Unwilling to lose his brother and allow the Xibalbans to win as they had all of those years prior, Xbilanque called upon the animals he and his brother had befriended, and had them bring all they could. At the rear, the coati bringing the most important thing, a squash. This was sat upon the bloodied shoulders of Hunaphu, and carved in the likeness of a face, and with a prayer the heart of the sky delivered Hunaphu, though with a squash for a head. The brothers would continue, even in their compromised state, befuddling and embarrassing the Xibalbans, these keepers of death, over and over again, until it came time for their final trick. After seemingly dying and being turned to ash, cast in the rivers, the boys returned 5 days later to the Xibalbans, toting themselves the same as ever, despite being killed and butchered, to which the Xibalbans wished to see themselves being revived in this manner, to which the boys agreed. Killing and dismembering them and then not bringing them back to life, the likes of 1 death and 7 death perished, and the rest of the Xibalbans looked onward in fear and confusion at what they had just seen. Why was it that their allies weren't being brought back to life, even though the boys could burn and disappear? And it was here that the boys revealed to them that the Xibalban revelry was over. The Xibalbans prided themselves not on the creators of the world, not on the wonders of the heart of the sky, but on themselves, and as such were brought low by the twin heroes. They would be left as outsiders, feared, repulsed, the land of death, as it were, being turned upside down and hated. As typical with humbling the arrogant, the boys moved on, recovering the bodies of their father and uncle and proceeding from the depths of Xibalba, victorious, eyeing to the future. But the question remains, why was it that they could come back? Why did fire not burn, only scorch? Why was it that the cold never bothered them? That blade and beast listened to their words? Well, as the pair escaped Xibalba, and the death that had seeped in, the boys kept climbing, higher and higher, into a dark sky, a sky that Seven McCall once claimed to ignite with his eye and crest over with his beak. And it is here their flesh began to shimmer and shine. And from the heart of the sky they claimed the titles that the Seven McCall wrongly attributed to himself, Sun and Moon. This pair were no mere boys, no mere divine children, but the sun and moon bearers themselves. So now, the world once only coded in mannequin and shallow failures would soon give birth to humanity, and it would have light and life. But that is a story for a different day.